Hi, everybody. My name is Koustuv. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at UIUC. On behalf of my co-authors, Pranshu, Gloria, Emre, and Munmun, I am excited to present our work on the observer effect in social media use. Now, recent research has increasingly shown the success of passive sensing and in-situ settings in measuring and understanding human behaviors and well-being. However, one assumption is that these sensing technologies would not impact an individual's typical behaviors. But what if individuals become aware of being observed and adjust their behaviors different from normalcy? Then passive sensing may not remain so passive after all, and we may have to adjust our findings accordingly, or even re-question the existence of these technologies. So in this work, we examined observer effect in the social media use. Now I'll start with social media. Platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat enable us to share our thoughts and connect with others. And social media can also be thought of as a passive sensor for human behaviors and well-being. Now, some of the unique strengths of social media as a sensor are this data is self-recorded in a self-motivated fashion in one's naturalistic setting. This data can be collected unobtrusively to obtain longitudinal and historical data that also goes beyond study periods. And this social media data can also alternatively function as a verbal sensor, as it can capture people's linguistic expressions. And this builds on the notion that even traditionally, psychological care is based on someone's speaking patterns and what they are talking about. And plenty of research has showcased how social media can be used as a passive sensor for measuring human behaviors and well-being. The potential of mesh sensing technologies, including social media, is explained by this social ecological model, which is the figure on the right. This model tells us that people's behaviors and experiences are not isolated, and they're impacted by relationships, the communities that we live in, or by events and factors in the society. And these sensing technologies enable us to capture people's naturalistic and in-situ behaviors and experiences. On the other hand, this social ecological model also points out that observers or researchers can also become a part of a subject's ecology and can also affect the subject's behaviors. Now, observer effect is the phenomenon that people may start altering their behaviors if they feel they are being observed. And this effect is also popularly called as the Hawthorne effect and is often cited as a source of bias for observed behavioral changes among study participants. Now, a little bit of background here. This phenomenon is also popularly called as the Hawthorne effect for historical reasons. So in the 1920s, at the Hawthorne plants, a group of researchers wanted to study the effects of different illumination levels on worker productivity. And they found that no matter what timing or kind of illumination was used, worker productivity always increased. And this shifted their interest that the behavior change was possibly not due to the changes in illumination, but due to the awareness of being observed. And over the years, observer effect has been cited as a source of bias for observed behavioral changes among study participants. But before investigating, I ask if observer effect can be avoided. And the answer is yes. Like we can conduct retrospective and observational data studies, but these settings are not applicable in many cases, such as in identifying historically unobserved behaviors or conducting an intervention. And alternatively, we can also conduct studies and interventions without participants' awareness, such as the Facebook emotion contagion experiment, where participant feeds were modified for experimental purposes. Now, these studies can make great research findings without being impacted by the observer effect, but these also raise questions of ethical violations. And therefore, for best research and feasibility practices, observer effect remains a basic unexplored phenomenon that may impact research findings in human-centered studies. And particularly in the case of social media sensing, this effect is also more likely because social media participation is a form of intentional and conscious behavior, or a behavior that individuals can alter at their will. Now, we study if observer effect occurs in prospective studies of social media. So we conduct a causal study to measure observer effect in the longitudinal social media use of participants who consented to sharing social media data for research. And we validated our observations drawing on psychology and behavior science theories. Now, we asked two research questions. What is the prevalence and degree of observer effect in social media use? And how the psychological traits of individuals explain their likelihood to show observer effect in their social media use. We conduct our study as a part of this test project where participants were recruited in a multimodal sensing study to examine and understand their behaviors and well-being. These participants also provided us survey data on their psychological traits. And we measured observer effect on Facebook data of 316 participants for whom we had sufficient pre and post-enrollment Facebook data. Now, given that this is the first study of measuring observer effect on social media behaviors, we did not have any existing means to quantify these behaviors. So we operationalized observer effect by measuring the changes in two dimensions of social media activities. First, we measure the behavior changes, which include quantity of posts done and engagements received. On Facebook, engagements are in the form of likes and comments. Second, we measure the linguistic changes through topics and psycholinguistics. Now, topic modeling aims to characterize different content types that people post on social media posts. And we conducted unsupervised topic modelings followed by manual annotations into number of topics such as travel and locations, food and drinks, holiday plans, news, and so on. And in the case of psycholinguistic analysis, we used the widely adopted Luke lexicon to obtain psycholinguistic attributes across affect, cognition, lexical, and social categories. Now, to unpack our research aim further for every individual, we operationalized observer effect as the deviation in social media behaviors post-enrollment from the normative behaviors on pre-enrollment data. And this compares the actual data, which is what the participant behaves post-enrollment, and the counterfactual data, which the participant would have behaved had they not participated in the study. Now, our approach is motivated from the interrupted time series and synthetic control-based analysis around relative date of enrollment in the multimodal sensing study. We built time series models which take into account the historical behaviors and predict expected post-enrollment behaviors. Now, ideally, we would use personalized modeling to measure the deviations of each participant, but social media data is sparse and not ideal for building personalized models. So, given the sparsity issues of social media data, it was hard to conduct personalized analysis on each individual's behaviors. And analyzing the entire data together would not have captured richer differences. So we balanced the trade-offs between two personalized and two generalized models by adopting a middle ground of clustering participants on self-reported intrinsic traits, as in the bottom of the heat map. And then we conducted per cluster analysis. Now, this approach also enabled us to meaningfully interpret who is likely to show observer effect and in what way based on their traits. For example, cluster C2 has individuals with high negative affect, anxiety, and neuroticism, and are likely to be withdrawn and prone to stress and irritability. So for each cluster, we built autoregressive ARIMA models trained on pre-enrollment data and predicted post-enrollment time series data. We used SMAP, t-test, and Cohen's-d to quantify the deviations and statistical significance. We also adopted placebo tests on randomly permuted enrollment dates to measure if the observer effects are not by chance. Now, we made several observations and theory-driven interpretations on observer effect per cluster of individuals on different psychological traits. Let's look at two clusters, C1 and C2. Now, C1 contained individuals with high cognitive ability and low neuroticism. Their posting significantly decreased in the first 2 weeks, but subsequently became closer to normalcy. These individuals showed increased sociality in their language. Now, one explanation is that people with higher cognitive ability are less likely to show psychological reactance. They might have lower self-monitoring, be less bothered about being observed, and be comfortable sharing their social and personal lives on social media. On the other hand, C2 had individuals likely to be withdrawn and more prone to stress and irritability. Now, while they increased postings since participating in the study, they decreased sharing about personal and social topics such as friends and family. Now, which is also possibly because of high self monitoring skills. Also, neuroticism is associated with higher information seeking, and these individuals received greater engagement. Now, I encourage you all to go through all of these findings in closer detail on how these observations varied for different clusters of participants. Now, this work provides insights into whether observer effect exists, how long does it last, and who is more likely to show observer effect and in what way. Methodologically, we provide a causal approach to quantify and infer observer effect in longitudinal sensing studies. And this work bears theoretical and practical implications about correcting for biases in using social media as a passive sensor. Now, keeping aside the sensing and measurement related challenges, from an ethical point of view, this work empirically informs that these sensing technologies can indeed make individuals to deviate from their normal behaviors. However, if these technologies interfere with people's social media use or make them feel uncomfortable or surveilled, the fundamental goals and expectations of using these social media platforms are broken. Now, think of it this way: we participate on social media to connect and share with others, and not exactly to be assessed on our well being or their behavior or our behaviors. But if we know that we are being observed, then we may not be participating the same way as we typically do. And this makes us rethink and re-question the use of these data-driven assessments in the real world. Now, with that, I will end it here, but I'll be very happy to take any questions during the conference or otherwise. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or would like to chat about this work. Thank you so much.